Well, now that I've had some coffee, I think I'd better make a video. I hope it doesn't kill me before I finish. I don't have a Jack Tatum video yet, and in my mind, Tatum is inseparable from Dale K. Myers, so I think I'll just throw it all together into this one video. Jack Tatum has done interviews, but this is the only statement of his on the official record. It's from 1978 with some HSCA investigators, and his statement reads thus: "Although I did not remember the exact time, I remember it was early in the afternoon on Friday, November 22nd, 1963. I was driving north on Denver and stopped at 10th Street when I first saw the squad car and a man walking on the sidewalk near the squad car. Both the squad car and this young white male were coming in my direction, east on 10th Street. At the time I was just approaching the squad car, I noticed this young white male with both hands in the pockets of his zippered jacket, leaning over the passenger side of the squad car. This young white male was looking into the squad car from the passenger side. The next thing I knew, I heard something that sounded like gunshots as I approached the intersection, 10th and Patton. I heard 3 shots in rapid succession until and I went right through the intersection, stopped my car, and turned to look. I then saw the officer lying on the street and saw this young man standing near the front of the squad car. Next, this man with a gun in his hand ran toward the back of the squad car, but instead of running away, he stepped into the street and shot the police officer who was lying in the street. At that point, this young man looked around him and then started to walk in my direction, and as he started to break into a small run in my direction, I sped off in my auto. All I saw him to the intersection and ran south on Patton towards Jefferson." And that's his only official statement that he signed. The most prominent iteration of the Jack Tatum story was made on the Frontline television show Who Was Lee Harvey Oswald in 1993, where Jack Tatum himself appears and tells part of his story, and where Dale Myers tells the shooting part of his story.
Of the 7 eyewitnesses to the shooting, the one with probably the clearest view was Jack Tatum.
I was preparing to turn left on 10th Street from Denver. I noticed an individual walking in my direction with a light zipper jacket on, darker pants, and a squad car pulling over to the curb next to him. As I approached the squad car, I noticed that that individual was leaning over talking to the officer, and he had both hands in the pockets of his jacket. I continued through the intersection, and about in the middle of the intersection, I heard 3, maybe 4 shots.
Researcher Dale Myers investigated the Tippit shooting.
Killer gets to about this position on the sidewalk, and Tippit's patrol car pulls to the curb and either calls him over to the curb or the man comes over by himself and leans to the window and talks to Tippit through the vent window for 10 or 20 seconds, very short. And Tippit gets out of the patrol car, and as he does, the man steps over to the front of the hood here, and as Tippit gets opposite him, he pulls a gun from under the jacket, fires 3 shots across the hood, knocking Tippit to the pavement. Then the man starts to leave, hesitates at the back of the car, walks around behind the car, comes up to the front of the car, stands over Tippit, and shoots him in the head.
He then looked around, surveyed the situation, and started a slow run toward my direction. I put my car in gear and drove forward and watched him through the rearview mirror. I saw him very clearly, and I realized that there was one thing that made him stand out, and that was his mouth that curled up. I couldn't mistake that.
Kind of a smile.
Yes, kind of a smile. And I was within 10, 15 feet of that individual, and it was Lee Harvey Oswald.
So what Jack Tatum says on Frontline here matches his statement, but he doesn't tell the part of his story that tells of the shooting. Dale Myers tells that part of the story. And Dale Myers says that the shooter shot Tippit in the head, and Jack Tatum never said that in his statement. So it's good to keep that in mind. But basically the story is the same as the statement. That is, Tippit was shot immediately and fell to the ground, and then the shooter walked around the car and shot Tippit again after he was down. Now, we should keep in mind that Tatum is a witness who appeared 15 years after the assassination. He was an unknown witness prior to 1978. But we have known witnesses who are known from 1963, eyewitnesses to the shooting. One of them was Domingo Benavides. Here in his Warren Commission testimony, Mr. Bellon asked, "You heard the shot and pulled in, and then what?" "Then I ducked down. Then what happened?" "Then I heard the other two shots, and I looked up, and the policeman was in. He seemed like he kind of stumbled and fell." "Did you see the policeman as he fell?" "Yes, sir." "What else did you see?" "Then I see the man turn and walk back to the sidewalk and go to the sidewalk, and he walked away maybe 5 foot and then kind of stalled. He didn't exactly stop, and he threw one shell and must have took 5 or 6 more steps and threw the other shell up, and then he kind of stepped up to a pretty good trot going around the corner." "You saw the man go around the corner headed in what direction, on what street?" "On Patton Street. He was going south." Clearly, if Tatum's story of the delayed shot, the coup de grace shot, were true, then Benavides would have mentioned it, but he tells the story with one shooting event with several shots, or more than 2 shots at least, and there's no coup de grace. There's no walking around the car and shooting the officer when he was down. And Benavides is one of the witnesses we know was there, unlike Jack Tatum. And similarly, another original witness, Helen Markham, tells the story without the coup de grace. "Yes, this man shot the policeman." "You heard the shots, did you?" "Yes, sir." "How many shots did you hear?" 3. "What did you see the policeman do?" "He fell to the ground, and his cap went a little ways out on the street." "What did the man do?" "The man, he just walked calmly, fooling with his gun." "Toward what direction did he walk?" "Come back towards me, turned around, and went back." "Toward Patton?" "Yes, sir, towards Patton." So another witness that we know was actually there said that there was no coup de grace shot. And the other eyewitness, there are 3, or 3 that are credible. Well, let's not get off topic here. The other eyewitness, William Scoggins, the cab driver, says the same thing. "How many shots did you hear?" 3 or 4 in the neighborhood. They was fast. "They were fast shots?" Yes, they were fast." "Then what did you do or say or hear?" "Then I saw the man falling, grab his stomach and fall." He's talking about the officer. And he talks about the shooter going down Patton Street. Once again, the witnesses we know were there say there was no shooting of the officer after the officer was down. So it seems to me that any credible researcher who knows the evidence cannot possibly believe Jack Tatum, who comes along 15 years later and adds a new element to the story that could not possibly have been missed by the original witnesses. And we also have ear witnesses who heard shots, and none of them describe a sequence of shots that would fit what Jack Tatum says. So Jack Tatum is not credible, and any knowledgeable researcher who believes him is not credible. And Dale Myers titled his book about Oswald shooting Tippit, he titled it "With Malice." Now, with malice depends upon the coup de grace shot. If Oswald shoots Tippit just because he's trying to escape arrest, it's murder, but it's not with malice. It's only with malice because he walked around the car and shot Tippit to kill him. And as Dale Myers said, shot him in the head. So the very name of Myers' book depends upon the Jack Tatum story being true, and it's not a credible story, and it never was, not in 1978 and not in 2023. And it wasn't until 2018, apparently, that Dale Myers began to publicly question the details of Jack Tatum's story. And in that blog post from 2018, he said that Jack Tatum never said that the final shot was fired into Tippit's skull. And then in 2020, November 6, 2020, an anonymous person posted a comment to his blog saying, "Why in the almighty universe did you write here that Tatum never said that the final shot was fired into Tippit's skull? In your very book, you quote him telling you he didn't walk back, he hurried back and cautiously approached him and then shot him again in the head. With malice, page 71. So what's going on here?" And Dale Myers responds, "The paraphrased quote attributed to Tatum in my book, With Malice, page 71, 1998 edition, and page 123, 2013 edition, is inaccurate, having survived an early draft of the book in which John Moriarty's speculation about the Tippit head wound influenced my rendering of Tatum's comments about the same. The phrase "in the head" should have been in brackets or outside the quotation, as it was a qualifier to what Tatum actually said. Same for the phrase "after the shooting the officer in the head." In addition, I also wrote in my book, "The bullet fired into Officer Tippit's skull at point-blank range," page 72, 1998 edition, and page 123, 2013 edition, the phrase "point-blank range" is also inaccurate, as there is no medical evidence that specifies the distance at which the headshot or any of the shots that struck Tippit were fired. So Myers is claiming that this was a mistake, that he didn't really mean to misquote Tatum, that this was just survived an early draft of his book, and yet it survived until the 2013 edition of his book, too. He never corrected it. And the name of the book, With Malice, depends upon the coup de grace shot. And he didn't change the title of his book, either. This is lying. This is what Dale Myers does. He's lying not just about what Tatum said. He lied about that for 30 years. But now he's lying about why he misquoted Jack Tatum in his book. Now, if he had made this correction early on, then it would be credible, because the HSCA report, which was based on that statement, and Moriarty's interpretations, it does say in the statement that Tatum said he shot him point-blank range in the head. So the mistake does exist in this 1979 final report of the HSCA. So if Myers had made this mistake and corrected it expeditiously, then it would be credible as a mistake. But given that he waited more than 30 years to correct it, I don't think it's credible. I don't think it was a mistake. I think he was lying. And I think that's what the sequence of events indicates. Myers interviewed Jack Tatum in 1983. Myers tells the Tatum story on Frontline in 1993. Tatum's HSCA statement was released in 1997, in November of 1997. So Myers no doubt saw that within a reasonable amount of time, I would think. And it's a year later, in November of 1998, that Myers publishes With Malice. So he should have been able to correct this mistake before he published the first edition of his book. But then, 15 years later, he publishes the new edition of his book without correcting it. And then in 2018 is the first public statement by Myers questioning the veracity of Jack Tatum's coup de grace shot, whether you want to include the head or not. That's the first time he's on the record questioning it. And then he admits in 2020 that he misquoted Jack Tatum. Liar Myers and Liar Tatum.